Hey everyone, it's Carissa at Sprinkled with Glitter. Thanks for joining me today. Today I wanted to share a look at the new Catherine Pooler ink pads with you. I know that there's probably a lot of questions out there, and hopefully I have a lot of answers for you today. Once I walk you through the ink pads, I'm also going to walk you through a project, so be sure to stick around for that. Now you're looking at the Zen Garden Spa collection of inks from Catherine Pooler. These 8 colors, minus that midnight there that's in the lower right, are all designed to work together. So you know if you're pulling 2 colors from this collection, they're going to work well together. All of these inks are dye-based and non-permanent except for the midnight pad. Now this deep, like rich black pad is archival. So once it's dried, it's permanent, and it's also Copic friendly. Now all of the other inks in the collection are a water-based dye ink, and they are water reactive. So they're not going to be compatible with your Copic markers. The colors aren't, but that midnight pad is. Now, they are also stackable, and I know that that's important for some people. I store mine in an ink storage system along the wall, so it's not as important to me, but I know that it is space saving and they stack up nicely. Now, these pads are different than anything else on the market. They are actually a raised foam surface. Now, most pads are a felt surface, so you can see that this pad has a lot of give. That foam surface helps to transfer ink to your stamp. Now here's a standard felt pad. It does not have nearly as much give when I push on it. But once again, this foam surface is very soft and spongy. I don't know how to describe it, but the purpose of it is to transfer the ink better to the stamp. But keeping in mind that that surface is now a little bit more soft, you're going to have to adjust the way that you ink up your stamps a little bit. So instead of really pressing and twisting that stamp onto your ink pad like you're used to doing with your felt ink pads, you're just going to give it a few light taps onto that surface, and you can see how beautifully these stamp right away. I mean, you get a nice, solid, deep colored image, and with just those few taps on your ink pad, you're going to get a great stamped image every time. Now, I thought I would walk you through all of the colors in this collection, and I wanted to just see them stamped out for myself, but I think it's also fun for you to see them stamped out so you can see the beautiful rainbow that you get. Now, this is the more kind of muted collection. There is a much brighter collection, and I love that these inks come in such a beautiful variety of colors. Now, here's a look at that midnight ink pad. Do you see how thick and juicy that ink is on there? And when I stamp it onto my paper, I get a nice dark black image right away. Now, these inks do stay wet a little longer than most dye inks. So what that means is that you can easily emboss with these. So I've stamped that image onto my paper, and now I'm going to add some sparkle embossing powder right over the top, and then I'm going to heat set that. So it's great that you can use these for embossing. And I think one of the greatest things about these inks overall is not only how well they stamp right away, but how versatile they really are. And you can see the sparkly image that I got there. Now I've brought in my ink blending tools, and I'm going to show you that these are also great for ink blending. I'm bringing in a tonic craft mat so I don't mess up my surface. This is easy wipe clean. And by the way, that little foam ink blending tool, little caddy there that I'm using is actually for nail polish, and I will link it in the supplies, so be sure to check that out. And you can see here, I am easily blending this ink onto some standard Neenah Solar White cardstock. Now, I'm sure this ink would blend even better if I was using something like a Bristol Smooth or a watercolor cardstock, but this blended just fine on that Neenah. Now, I've taken some ink directly to my paper because I wanted to show you that this is water reactive. So I'm just putting some ink down, I'm adding some water droplets on top, and I'm allowing them to set, and then I'm soaking up that water. So you can see that you can get that water reactive kind of splattered droplet look if that's what you're going for. Now, if you want that kind of water bleached look to be a little more intense, just leave your droplets on the surface of the ink for a little bit longer before you pick it up with your paper towel or your cloth, and that will intensify that effect. Now, you can also watercolor with these dye-based inks here. Most inks you can watercolor with, but some I think you get better results with than others because these are designed to be water reactive and not permanent after they're stamped. I think that property makes them a little bit better for watercoloring. And you can see I'm just taking a water brush here and picking some of that ink up off of my craft sheet and watercoloring onto this. Now this is Neenah Solar White cardstock, so it is not designed for watercoloring, but you can imagine that you can get great results on your watercolor cardstock as well. So now that we've had a look at the inks, let's kind of put some of these to action here. I am starting out with this Doodle background stamp from the Zen Garden collection from Catherine Pooler Designs. I've prepped the surface of my Neenah Solar White cardstock with my powder tool because I'm going to be embossing this pattern all over this A2 size card front. So it's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. And you can see I've taken my cardstock to the stamp and I'm pressing all along the back of that cardstock to transfer that Versamark ink. One of my hands always stays still and the other one kind of moves around to transfer that ink. Then I picked it straight up and I added some white embossing powder to this image, and you can see that that image really pops out on that white cardstock when you add the embossing powder. Now, when you're embossing an entire background like this, make sure that your heat tool is good and hot before you start that embossing process, and that will minimize the warping. So now I'm taking this paint stroke stamp. This is from the Essentials by Ellen line, and I am going to ink up this paint stroke stamp several times in different colors to create a really beautiful effect on the front of this card. And you can see I'm getting that emboss resist effect also. So where this color lands, the pattern really pops out. And then you have the texture of the embossed image all over the background of this card front. So I use polished Shea Butter, SEAFOAM, and Skylight for these, and I think these colors are really beautiful. I originally wanted to stamp the Skylight at the bottom, but I ran out of room because I hadn't actually originally planned on using 4 colors. I just was going to use the 3. And you could see there I was using a block that was way too small for that stamp, but it all worked out in the end. For my sentiment, I'm going to be using this Create die from Catherine Pooler Designs. I'm going to be cutting it out of some gold glitter cardstock. So I am using the metal shim in my Gemini Junior sandwich so that I get a nice clean cut through that glitter cardstock. And I'm also going to cut this out of some Neenah Solar White paper with some craft foam attached to the back. So I have a little bit of stick-it adhesive here and I'm adding it to a piece of Neenah Solar White cardstock. I just used my craft knife to help me lift the backer from that. And then I'm going to go ahead and remove the other backer. This is a double-sided adhesive. And I'm going to place some craft foam on the back of that Neenah Solar White cardstock. And then I'm going to run it through my die cut machine, once again, using the metal shim in my sandwich. Now, the Gemini Junior is a little bit different with its metal shim because the metal shim is actually designed to be cut into so that you get that kind of metal on metal effect that you get with scissors. So don't be afraid to cut into that shim with your Gemini Junior. Now, I've also die cut this from some kind of charcoal gray cardstock, and I'm adding some liquid adhesive to the back. And I'm going to stamp those die cuts on top of each other, slightly offsetting it so I get that shadow effect. And then once again, I'm going to add liquid glue to the front of that piece with the craft foam attached to the back. And I'm going to attach that to the back of that layered up die cut sentiment so that I don't have to cut little tiny pieces of foam adhesive. Now for the rest of my sentiment, I'm using a little stamp that says Sunshine. This is from a United We Flourish stamp set from the Essentials by Ellen line. And I am heat embossing it onto this charcoal cardstock and then just taking it over to my trimmer and trimming it down into a little strip. It's not a banner. I didn't cut banner ends in it this time. I did something a little different. Aren't you proud of me? So to attach it onto my card, I'm actually layering it up with a vellum heart that I created. I die cut this from some vellum, and the die itself is from the Folk Hearts die set from the Essentials by Ellen line, and you can see I'm just layering all these elements up. Now, my original plan for this card front was just to throw it on a white card base and be done, but When I started looking at it, I really felt like it needed something a little bit more. So I cut 1/4 of an inch off of one of those sides. And now I'm taking some light gray cardstock and I'm stamping that same doodle background stamp onto this light gray cardstock with some Versamark ink. And it gives me a really beautiful tone on tone effect. And that's just going to peek out from the side of this card front. So I attached it onto my card base using some tape runner adhesive. And for the card front itself, I'm going to add that on with some foam adhesive to create some more dimension. And you can see I'm just lining it up with the card front by kind of holding them all against my desk surface so that all of those edges are nice and even when I press that down. Now, to make it shine just a little bit more, I finished this card off with some sparkling clear sequins and a layer of glossy accents over that gold glitter die cut sentiment, which just really makes that gold glitter shine. So there you have it, a look at the new Catherine Pooler ink pads and some of the new products in the Zen Garden collection from Catherine Pooler. I think this card turned out really beautiful. I love the way that that pattern is kind of really subtle all over the background of this card front. And then it really pops out where I've stamped those abstract paint strokes in those beautiful colors of ink. As always, I will have links to the featured supplies in the description at YouTube. But head on over to my blog because I'll have more still shots, more information, and a complete list of supplies for you over there. Thanks for stopping by today. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this project. If you did, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to share it with a friend that you may think will like it as well. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day. Once again, I want to thank you for spending time with me today. If you want to subscribe to my channel, go ahead and hit that button on the left side of the screen. And here's a couple other videos I thought you might enjoy.